Welcome to Midnight Oil, where the reel never stops turning. I'm Tab.
And I'm Keegan. Today, we're rolling back the credits, way back, to the start of the film industry.
How did we go from flickering silent films to the CGI spectacles we see today?
And what about those weird experiments where they just filmed people sneezing?
Stick around to find out, because this story is as epic as a summer blockbuster.
Before we dive in, let's set the stage a little bit. In the 1800s, the idea of capturing motion fascinated inventors. Thomas Edison gave us the kinetoscope, which was a box where you peeked in to watching moving pictures. Meanwhile, though, in France, the Lumiere brothers were perfecting their cinematograph. Cinematograph.
Cinematograph?
Cinematograph. Which projected movies onto a screen. The audience completely blown.
The audience was blown? I'd like to be in that audience.
Mind blown. Mind blown. But let's get into it.
Yeah. So the first era that we're going to be diving into is the silent era. And that was like way, way, way early. Like in the 1900s.
Real long time ago.
Hell,
Not like early, not even like late to mid 1900s. We're talking 19 early hundreds.
yeah, like 1910.
Holy. What's your favorite early 1900s movie?
I couldn't even name one. I'll be so real with you.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, the late 19th century actually is what pushed forward the film industry. Because before then, we didn't have movies, really. So, in the late 19th century, Thomas Edison created this thing called the kinetoscope. And the Lumiere brothers created this cinematograph. Sounds like I'm saying Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So Edison made his kinetoscope in 1891. Wow.
That's insane.
And the invention was developed by Thomas Edison and his assistant William Kennedy Laurie Dixon. The kinetoscope was literally the pioneer of motion picture devices. It was designed for individual viewing using a little peephole to watch a strip of film that moved continuously over a light source, which is like insane that they did this so long ago and how far it's gotten since then. But the impact of it is insane because it introduced the concept of moving pictures to the public eye and paved a way for motion picture cameras and different projectors. The only limitations is that it wasn't a projector, so only one person at a time could view the movie. So like you would be like in this room of other people and they're just waiting in line with their hands in their pockets, waiting to watch the movie. You're just waiting there for like 2 hours. The Lumiere brothers cinematograph, which was made in 1895, 4 years later, was created by Auguste and Louis Lumiere. The cinematograph was a significant improvement over Edison's kinetoscope. Just remember that Thomas Edison was the pioneer in this field.
Yeah, he was the first.
Yeah, he made all kinds of stuff. He was like a wizard. The technology was both a camera and a projector, which was capable of showing motion pictures to an audience. So more people than just one. You don't have to look through the peephole. The first screening, the Lumieres held the first public screening of their films. We have it documented the exact day of December 28th, 1895 in Paris, making the
Ooh.
birth of cinema as a collective experience. The most notable film was one of their early works, like the workers leaving the Lumiere factory and the arrival of a train at La Coitate. Ciotat. Basically, these captivated audiences because they're like, holy cow, this is actually insane.
I mean, that checks out. That was like
Um,
brand new to them because they're used to just watching like plays and reading books. And so now they're like watching shit on the screen.
yeah, like, can you imagine a world where we don't have like any screen devices? Like screens didn't really exist. The closest thing you had to something that was animated at this time were those LED signs that have different lanes of lights that make it look like it's moving.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, those are not all over the place. So, like, the 19th century going into the 20th century was literally changing the world.
Yeah.
So, silent film classics, we're just going to do two of them. Well, I'm just going to do one. The Great Train Robbery in Charlie Chaplin's legacy is insane. So, The Great Train Robbery released in 1903. The director was Edwin S. Porter. And basically, this was a 12-minute film. 12 minutes was a film. Depicted a dramatic train robbery and featured innovative editing techniques like cross cutting and parallel action. It's insane that it's depicting a train robbery because train robbery now, like to us, sounds like a very like old west thing, but
Mm-hmm.
to them this was happening. So it is often considered the first narrative film demonstrating the storytelling potential of cinema, while the closing shot of a bandit firing directly at the camera literally was the first jump scare because it startled and thrilled like the early audiences. And that's just how the
Whoa.
movie ends. Yeah, it was the first jump scare. So Charlie Chaplin, he lived between 1889 and 1977. The silent era icon, Charlie Chaplin, was a master of physical comedy and emotional storytelling, known for his tramp character with a bowler hat, cane, and signature mustache.
Mm.
Notable films that he was in: 1921's The Kid, which is a heartwarming tale of a tramp caring for an orphaned boy. 1925, The Gold Rush was famous for its comedic scenes, like Charlie Chaplin eating his boot.
Yo.
And 1931, City Lights, which was a blend of humor and sentimentality. Basically, he was showcasing his genius, and he was just obviously groundbreaking because at the time he was like the big one to do it. He showcased the movie showcased Charlie Chaplin's genius even as sound films gained popularity. So even in 1931 when movies with sound were starting to come around, he made the silent films still popular.
Oh.
Yeah. So he elevated the silent cinema as an art form using visual gags and really good storytelling to explore these different themes.
Yeah, he introduced slapstick, didn't he?
He kind of yeah, he kind of did. Yeah. He
That's
did
sick.
a lot of funny bits. The eating his shoe is probably the most like recognizable, but like you have to think these movies were silent, like silent. So you're sitting in this theater, it's like very quiet. Like the only thing that you're hearing is going to be like people talking and laughing, which is why the idea of staying quiet in a movie theater was much more prominent back then and has since come with us, because over time you need to be less quiet in the movie. Like some people, like their voices, you can get away with talking in a movie theater now. I don't recommend it. Please don't talk during the movie. You're ruining other people's experiences. But the reason that that started was because it was literally in the silent film era where you will hear the people talking. If somebody's talking, you're going to hear it because there's no sound whatsoever. So you could hear a coin drop in that room.
Hmm. So, since silent films had no synchronized audio, live music had to provide like the emotional backbone and to kind of fill that silence. So they actually did, it wasn't like completely silent. In at least most of the films, they had live pianists or orchestras that played tailored scores to match the mood of the scenes, whether that be dramatic, comedic, or suspenseful. So, like, think like the sad violin, um,
Doo doo. I don't know what
like
the sad, whatever the sad song is. Oh, the sad sax as well.
yeah. So interestingly enough, they had to have that because there was actually like a lot of noise, like you said, with like the audience had to be quiet. So if they did talk, plus the sound of the humming from the projector, so they had to have like the orchestras and stuff in there, or else that's all you would hear is the audience like whispering to each other, talking, and then the projector humming.
Whoa, that's so crazy. Yeah, the loudest thing in the theater during the silent film era was probably the projector, or someone talking, or
Yeah.
someone maybe eating.
And a really interesting thing about the musicians that were playing during these movies, they improvised. They usually didn't have a standardized score for the movie. They were just sitting there watching it and playing whatever they thought came to mind. So it
That's
was,
cool.
yeah, it was adding like a unique element. So every show that you went and saw, even if it was the same movie, it could be different like every single time. And so it was almost like interactive for the audience to just like be there and witnessing that.
What a cool way to experience a movie.
Mhm. And
Wow.
that puts us into the sound effects kind of vibe. So some of the theaters actually employed like Foley artists, which if anybody knows about movie making sound effects, the Foley people are like, oh, the people that'll just record them walking on rocks or lighting a lighter or a cigarette just to kind of amplify the sounds that are in the movie. So, like, they'll record that separate and then they'll add that in post. But back in the day, of course, they didn't have that type of technology. So, they would create these noises live. And some examples include a sheet of metal for thunder, they would just shake it. Coconut shells for horse hooves, and a whistle for wind. And that would all just be performed live in the theater while you're just sitting there watching the movie. And I think that's kind of cool. Can you imagine you just see a dude like how they have those like sign language interpreters up there at concerts sometimes?
Yeah,
Can you
his
imagine
pockets are just
seeing
like full of paper
yeah,
and tin foil bells.
yeah. Like, can you just imagine seeing a dude standing up to like the right of the screen, kind of out of the way, and he just pulls up a giant sheet of metal and just starts fucking shaking it? I
Wow,
would
wow,
die
wow, wow,
laughing.
wow. Ring, ring, ring. Wow, wow, wow. Ch 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 ch. Bet, bet, bet. Like, and that's so funny.
I would literally die laughing. And some of the
Oh,
screenings, I don't know if you've ever watched like silent films, but they would like cue audience participation, and words or something would pop up on the screen and just be like clap or laugh. And so like the audience was cued to clap or laugh to make the movie like I guess more immersive.
They also had like cuts in the movies. So like when someone shot a gun, it would just be a title card that says bang. Like
Mhm.
it's crazy. It's so crazy how far we've come.
No, yeah. And so if we backtrack and we move on to some of the like the little facts that I have found. So I'm going to start off with the very first motion picture ever filmed. They it's widely considered to be the Roundhay Garden scene in 1888, shot by Louis Le Prince. It's 2.1 seconds long of people walking in a garden.
But why?
I don't know. Like it's just I
And that was
don't
the
know.
first time what?
That was the first motion picture ever filmed.
In 1888?
Yep.
Holy.
Mhm. And ever since we mentioned this in the intro, I've been wondering about it, and I finally found it. The Sneezing. One of the earliest films, Fred Ott's Sneeze, in 1894, simply shows a man just sneezing. At the time, this mundane action was groundbreaking, and audiences were fascinated of just a dude sneezing.
When was so what did they record the walking in the garden with? Because in like I said in 1891 Thomas Edison made the kinetoscope, and that was the earliest thing that I found to like do like well, okay. So this is weird. So I guess Edison made a way to watch these things, but a couple years before that, we had a way to record them. But how did we watch them?
Let me see.
Because what I'm thinking is that we were able to view movies, but they weren't like clipped together like that. Like we probably, I don't know, like a flip book, watched them like a flip book or something. I don't know. Could you imagine buying a like movie ticket for $1 or whatever it would have been back then, like 50 cents, and you walk into a room and there's just a pile of paper there, and they just say, "Please flip through at this speed," and then you're like in there flipping through 12 minutes of paper.
So it looks like the Roundhay Garden scene was filmed using a single lens camera and Eastman's paper film at 12 frames per second. The scene was recorded on an 1885 Eastman Kodak paper base photographic film through LePrince's single lens combi camera projector. He was an inventor, Louis
so
LePrince.
So basically, we were able to make movies before Thomas Edison. He just made a mainstream way for a better viewing experience,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, because it very much does look like the flip book thing that you were talking about. Hold on.
Does it really?
Yeah, I sent the link for you to look at
Oh,
it.
amazing. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it literally looks like they just layer a picture on top of another picture, and then they clip it together like it's a film.
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy. Interesting.
Yeah.
So
And
Tab.
then hold on, the last fact that I'll leave off on. This one was interesting. In 1895, this was the first special effects. I don't necessarily know how to say his name. Georges Mieles accidentally discovered the stop trick technique when his camera jammed. This led to the first special effects where the objects appeared to vanish or transform on screen. And now we can move on.
Mm, that's crazy. I wonder if I wonder if the popcorn back then tastes the same.
I actually have some fun facts on popcorn, but we can do that at the end.
Okay. Okay. You're gonna get quizzed. I'm gonna quiz you
Quiz
on
time!
some silent films. So I'm gonna give you a description, and you're going to tell me what you think the name of it is. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. But first, I'm gonna give you just a movie. It's not gonna be a silent film. This is an easy one that
Okay.
I'm gonna try and give you a softball so you feel a little bit better. Okay. A young dreamer is swept away to a magical land and embarks on a journey to find their way home, discovering courage, friendship, and self belief along the way.
What the fuck?
You 1000% have seen this movie. It is still older, but you have seen this movie.
A young dreamer? Hold on. Is it The Wizard of Oz?
It's The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, sick, sick. Look
Woohoo!
at me
One
go.
for one. All right. So if you don't know the movie, make up a name for it.
Okay.
All right. Let's go with this one. So this is a Buster Keaton classic. So you should know this. It
Okay.
involves hilarious accidents in a blacksmith's workshop.
Hilarious accidents in a blacksmith's workshop. Yeah, I don't know the name, so I'm gonna go with. Is it like a funny title or
No. Well,
no?
you'll think it's funny when you get it wrong.
Hilarious accidents in a blacksmith's workshop.
I'll give you a hint. If I saw this title, I would assume this is a story-driven movie about somebody doing something
The
that has
Killer
maybe
Tools.
comedic. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It was called The Blacksmith.
Oh,
Okay.
what?
Okay, I got we'll do two more. Another Buster Keaton classic.
Ugh.
So Buster Keaton's kind of tearing it up. Okay. Wait, no, this isn't Buster Keaton. I lied. This is a hilarious short about a chef's shenanigans in the kitchen, starring Fatty Arbuckle and Buster Keaton.
Oh, so now he's appearing in his own films. A chef
Released,
shenanigans?
yeah, chef's shenanigans in the kitchen, starring Fatty Arbuckle and Buster Keaton, released in 1918.
At this point, with the track record that we're on involving Buster Keaton, I'm gonna have to go with The Restaurant.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It was The Cook.
Oh my god. I'm gonna die.
All right. One more, maybe two more. While not quirky, it was one of the first films to tell a full story and shocked audiences with its action. It has to do with a train.
The Great Train Robbery.
You got it! You got that one!
No way.
The Great Train Robbery, released in 1903.
No way. That was a guess.
The Great Train Robbery. That is very impressive.
That's crazy. Never heard of it.
Oh, here we go. I mean, these are all very on the nose. George Méliès' fantastical tale of astronauts shot to the moon in a giant cannon. 1902, by the way. We haven't even been anywhere close to the moon at this point.
They shot to the moon in a giant cannon.
Yes.
I mean, is it just called The Astronauts?
No, but that's a good guess. It's called A Trip to the Moon.
Oh,
Yeah,
lovely.
so basically, you can kind of get a feel of like naming conventions for movies, books, all kinds of stuff. It was very on the nose back then. Like nowadays, it's like not as on the nose. Definitely not. It's crazy. Some of the titles, like, what's a crazy title? Oh, uh, The Hunger Games Mockingjay. Like, if you're, if you break that down, you would be like, I don't know, about a feast or something. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not about a feast.
No.
But yeah, those are just a couple of the zingers.
That's goofy.
But now we roll on into the next topic, which is the golden age of Hollywood, believe it or not.
Oh.
Which we're talking the rise of Hollywood in the 1920s, 1940s. And there's a lot of stuff going on. So the emergence of Hollywood by the 1920s, it has become the global hub for filmmaking due to its ideal climate, its diverse landscapes, and the industry's migration from the East Coast. And the period saw the growth of film as a dominant form of entertainment, shaping global pop culture and solidifying Hollywood's influence. So they were basically like, hey, we really think this movie thing is a good idea. We're going to dedicate a location for it. And thus began Hollywood. So the introduction of talkies, not talkies, talkies, not the things you eat, but like talking. The jazz singer in 1927 was a technological revolution. The sound was introduced to films, ending the silent era, and the first talkie included synchronized dialogue, singing, and revolutionary storytelling in cinema. And this had a huge impact on the industry because studios quickly adapted building sound equipped stages and redefining how movies were written, directed, performed, and recorded, which is so crazy. Like, could you imagine making a new form of media now? Like, there's so many different things, and the trial and error period is like, it's just a crazy bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
This led to the evolution of the studio system. There were so just to name a couple, so you know what I'm talking about. We're talking like Fox, Warner Brothers, stuff like that. The era was defined by a dominance of major studios, including MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, RKO, 20th Century Fox, and they basically controlled the production, the distribution, and the exhibition
Hmm.
of all of these movies. So, like when you see the intros of the bump, 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 boom, dum, dum, doo, doo, doo. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
them. They started way back then, and there it was like a factory like system. So the studios developed a highly efficient process of employing actors, directors, crew on long term contracts to churn out films at an astonishing pace. They were like tossing out the slop. But back then, it was usually shorter and it was much more bearable. It's kind of like doing a bunch of like TikToks. It's easy to do TikToks. It's hard to make a long YouTube video or whatever. And this brought up iconic stars like Marilyn Monroe, Humphrey Bogart, uh, Charlie Chaplin, and apparently Buster Keaton. And Marilyn Monroe was rising in the late 1940s. She kind of became the symbol of glamour and allure, and transitioned into a very beloved figure in 1950s. She was very beautiful. Humphrey Bogart was known for his tough, charismatic persona, and he starred in classics like Casablanca, leaving the lasting legacy in film history. And if you don't know, I really recommend going watch the original Casablanca 1942. It's actually a really good movie. But yeah, that's the golden age of Hollywood, which was marked by innovation, rise of iconic stars, and they really nailed down the studio driven system that defined cinema's modern structure to this day.
Hmm. And of course, the rise of studios and the rise of movies, there's always scandals. So I'm going to dive into some of the scandals that happened in the 1920s. This is a special behind the scenes look. So I'm pretty sure you mentioned Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle in one of the movie quizzes, maybe?
Yeah, Fatty Arbuckle, yeah.
Yeah. So Roscoe Arbuckle was one of the biggest comedy stars of the 1920s until this gets a little dark. Until he was accused of the rape and manslaughter of actress Virginia Rapp at a party in 1921. The case was highly publicized, though Arbuckle was acquitted after 3 trials. Despite this, his career was destroyed, and it marked one of the first major Hollywood scandals.
Wow.
hmm The next
That's
one,
terrifying. Could you imagine? Like, that's like the first instance of it. There's so much of that probably happening.
there's a lot of murders that are like apparently still kind of like unsolved. So that's one of the ones I'm about to dive into. William Desmond Taylor, a popular director in silent films, Taylor was mysteriously murdered in 1922. The case remains unsolved, with actresses Mabel Normand and Mary Miles Minter rumored to be involved. The scandal captivated the nation and exposed the darker side of Hollywood. I think that's
Which
like
is dark. It's really dark.
insane. And there's a bunch of like Wallace Reed got addicted to morphine, so here's where drugs and substance abuse get into Hollywood. Actress Olive Thomas accidentally consumed her husband's mercury bichloride, a treatment for syphilis, in 1920 while on a trip to Paris. Her death was ruled accidental, but stirred gossip about infidelity and reckless behavior. And of course, the tabloids capitalized on that. So they started painting a picture of Hollywood as morally corrupt. But of course, all of these scandals and the risque content of the films caused public outcry. And to avoid oh my gosh. And to avoid government regulation, the film industry introduced the Hays Code, officially called the Motion Picture Production Code, in 1930, though it wasn't strictly enforced until 1934. The Hays Code was a set of moral guidelines governing what could and couldn't be depicted on screen. It was overseen by Will H. Hayes, a Presbyterian elder and former U.S. Postmaster General. Its goal was to clean up Hollywood's image and appease critics. So, some of the key rules of the Hays Code was that there were a bunch of prohibited topics. So, you couldn't have any nudity, sexual content, or even suggestive dancing. References to homosexuality or perversion were banned, and blasphemy, including profanity or mocking religion, was banned. Criminal acts could not be glorified, and villains had to face justice. Excessive
Wow.
violence or gruesome scenes were banned. Adultery, while allowed as a plot device, couldn't be portrayed in a sympathetic light. Couples were often shown sleeping in separate beds to avoid even the suggestion of intimacy. Police and government officials couldn't be shown as corrupt or inept, and respect for the law was mandatory. So, filmmakers became incredibly attentive to work around the restrictions, relying on innuendos, subtext, and symbolism. For example, in Alfred Hitchcock films, like Notorious, used clever camera angles and timing to imply intimacy without breaking the code.
Mm.
hmm So, in some of the early films, like The Sheik in 1921 and Babyface in 1933, pushed the boundaries with their provocative themes. After the Hays Code, such stories were heavily sanitized. But there were like loopholes that they tried to go through, like the camera angles and all of that. And some of the directors found ways to like bend those rules. And so the Hays Code dominated Hollywood until the late 1960s, when it was then replaced by the modern MPAA film rating system. So like the G, PG, PG-13, R, unrated, all that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I never thought about it that way, but I guess back then it was kind of like taboo to like show violence or show people like PDA, or I guess just all of these scenes were really taboo back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird that almost all of the things that you have named now are normal in film.
Yeah.
Like almost all of it. And they're in like PG-13 movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
I guess that's just to reduce like the restriction standards. Because I mean, obviously times change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I'm saying is like the vibe overall is completely different between an older film and a newer film. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you like, if you were to remake a film from back then now, it would not be anywhere close to the same at all. Like you have sound effects, you have all of these rules that aren't really followed anymore. Like there's just more ways to engage the audience. It's just so crazy how much different movies not only were but had to be back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of transitions us into modern innovations. The blockbuster era and special effects resolution was game changing. So the birth of blockbuster started with Jaws, I believe, in 1975, which was directed by, we all know the name, Steven Spielberg. Quite literally, this isn't on the test, but Spielberg has created some of the greatest films and storytelling of all time. In film media, he's crazy. So he's considered the first summer blockbuster using suspenseful storytelling and groundbreaking market strategies like wide releases and TV ads to dominate theaters. That started with Jaws in 1975. Now, we go to 1977. George Lucas creates Star Wars, which combined epic storytelling, innovative special effects, and a very, very memorable musical score to redefine science fiction and franchise filmmaking. It was and is one of the biggest film franchises of all time. It is large. If you haven't heard of Star Wars, like if you went up to somebody and you were like, "Hey, do you know what Star Wars is?" They would say yes. Now, have they watched it? Maybe not. It's not super out of the ordinary for people not to have watched Star Wars, but to never have heard it is almost, unheard of, at least in the Western world at this point. The impact was insane. It set the template for high grossing, event driven movies, created the concepts of must see cinematic experiences, and really just went through leaps and bounds of special effects. Like, you look back at the very first Star Wars movie, and the special effects in 1977 are crazy. They're so crazy. I would consider that movie relying pretty heavily on special effects because else they would not have the lightsabers, the blaster bullets, the a lot of the sets. Like, they did a lot of stuff. And that leads to the special effects revolution. Because shortly after that, in 1993, your boy Steven Spielberg came back and used some groundbreaking CGI to make Jurassic Park. These big CGI and mixed with animatronics to bring dinosaurs to life with super unprecedented realism. Like, obviously, they don't look incredibly like, yeah, this thing would look real next to me, and you wouldn't be able to tell between it and the real thing. But it was so good that during a movie, you weren't gonna, like, you would be like, this is insane, back in 1993. And it marked a turning point in integrating digital effects with live action filmmaking. Next, we're getting pretty close with The Matrix because it introduced the first very, very, very well done, in my opinion, bullet time slow motion capture, which was advanced compositing techniques, blending different visual innovations with philosophical storytelling. The Matrix is just a crazy movie, special effects wise, and it kind of offered unique aesthetics, and the use of CGI influenced a generation of filmmakers. So a lot of people, like, you'll see that stop, rotate around the person, like bullet time kind of moment. And
Hmm.
then, we were going to talk about it, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, ever since 2008's Iron Man. Literally, they just have a huge budget. It's so big. The
Yeah.
budget on Marvel movies are so big now. They revolutionized franchise filmmaking and interconnected storytelling across dozens of films, relaying hev or relying, not relaying, relying heavily on CGI for absolutely gigantic IPs like Captain America, Iron Man, Winter Soldier movie was crazy. Like, they were kind of going all out. Films like Iron Man 2008 and Avengers Endgame specifically in 2019 pushed boundaries of motion capture and digital rendering. Like, we we kind of like dump on Marvel now for the CGI, but just think about where it came from, where there was literally no CGI. Like, Marvel is kind of rushing things now, but the things that we're capable of, that's why people kind of dump on it, right? Because with the technology we have now, we can do some really amazing things, and they cut corners now because they're a big franchise and they don't want to pay all this money. But the fact that we have made it here is, like, the CGI now is just insane.
Oh yeah,
At least compared to 1977 Star Wars, it's ridiculous. So
for sure.
basically, the blockbuster era had a bunch of advances in special effects, transformed cinema into a medium where imagination kind of became a sandbox where there was
Mm-hmm.
no limits. You're able to create immersive, larger than life experiences, and it continues to this day to define what we consider modern filmmaking.
Yeah. And so off the back of that, like talking about how filmmaking is just like a sandbox. Of course, there were people that wanted to get in on this. So there was a rise of indie films. Because, of course, there's people that want to make films, but they don't have a budget, they don't have a studio, anything like that. So there was a rise of indie films from the 1940s to 1970s. Some of the key milestones of those were Meshes of the Afternoon in 1943, a surrealist indie film by Maya Duran that influenced art house cinema, and then Easy Rider from 1969 was a counter-cultural phenomenon that proved low budget films could achieve massive successes. And those kind of kicked off a boom for the 1980s and 1990s. The 1980s saw the rise of indie production companies like Miramax and New Line Cinema, which specialized in distributing unique and lower budget films. And then, so the Sundance Film Festival was founded in 1978 and rebranded in 1984, but that became the epicenter of indie filmmaking, launching careers of directors like Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith. So, Pulp Fiction was one of like Tarantino's big cult classic indie film kind of vibe. Tarantino crafted a non-linear crime drama filled with witty dialogue and memorable characters and pop culture references. Made on a budget of 8 million, it grossed over 200 million globally, proving indie films could compete with blockbusters. Which is interesting to me because, at least to me personally, a budget of 8 million is not indie. But like it could be, I guess.
That's like getting pretty high on the indie film chart. Like most people are not going to be, unless you're getting investors and they really believe in like your vision, you're not going to get $8 million and start your movie. Like it's just not going to
Mhm.
happen. It's not going to happen. A lot
Yeah,
of indie films, like if you're getting out of college or you're in college and you want to make your indie film debut, you might have $20,000. Maybe if you're coming from money, you have more. But I would say the high is like 100 grand.
yeah.
It might be more now, but like at least in the early 2000s, you're not gonna spend more than $100,000 on an indie film. Where are you getting that money from? Unless you're getting investors.
Very much that. But
And then at
so,
that point, you're not an indie film. You're a person who has obtained money from other people. Thus, that is now part their project, regardless of if you give them any credit for it. He like that's not independent anymore.
mhm. So transitioning from, you know, Pulp Fiction made with an 8 million budget, there's another cult classic. And this I would call more of an indie film in sense of budget because it's under fucking 8 million. But so Napoleon Dynamite in
Oh yeah,
2004 was shot for just 400,000 and it was featuring a cast of largely unknown actors and it grossed over $46 million.
yeah.
And so that's
Wow,
insane.
yeah. That's crazy. Good for them. I'm glad they made a bunch of money. How much did you say? 40 million?
46 million.
Almost $50 million. That's pretty good for an like a independent film under a
Mhm.
million bucks. That's impressive.
Yeah. And something interesting that I found like what actually makes a film a cult classic. And that's really just those films often cater to specific audiences who appreciate their unconventional style or themes. Some common examples would be, of course, the two that I just listed, Pulp Fiction and Napoleon Dynamite. But then there's also Rocky Horror Picture Show and Donnie Darko. Mainly cult classics, they want to show that they can repeat viewings. So people that'll sit there and watch it multiple times, like, oh, you know what movie I haven't seen in a while? Yeah, let's watch that. And they also cater to fan culture. which, you can do merch, cosplays, endless quotability. So those are like what make up cult classic. And of course, the timelessness of movies themselves is kind of what makes something just like a cult classic, which I thought that was interesting. And then to
Yeah, that's
briefly hit
crazy.
on how VHS, DVDs, and streaming kind of reshaped how we view things. It changed habits in the terms of, oh, we can rewatch things, we can own these movies instead of having to actually go out and watch them in theater. And so that's what VHS kind of introduced, is you could bring the movie home with you. And so that was interesting. And then when the DVD came out, that was a major leap in quality because it was able to offer sharper picture and sound, and DVDs were maybe easier to not ruin in the sense of your VHS tapes could get like tangled and stripped and all of that stuff. But DVDs, it was just like this little plastic ish disc, but you could also scratch them. So,
Mm.
and then streaming came along, and basically that kind of turned the tides of, oh, I can watch it anytime, anywhere, on any device. And so that kind of turned up like the binge watching culture, the decline of the physical medias because now we just have it on any device, the cinematic flexibility. Streaming made movies more accessible to underserved audiences, including international and indie films that might never reach theaters in certain regions. And it ended appointment viewing. So you don't have to schedule a time to go see this movie. Like, oh, the theater's playing this at 12 o'clock, or maybe we can go see the 9 o'clock showing, or, do we want to have dinner first? That kind of thing. You can just fucking turn on a movie whenever you feel like it. So it really emphasized convenience over communal viewing and shortened theatrical windows because studios now release films on streaming platforms weeks after their theatrical debuts, catering to an audience that prioritizes convenience. And some um studios even release like straight to streaming because I will say the cinema industry is dying in terms of like actually going to a movie theater and watching it because of
It's
streaming. So,
Yeah, it's really bad. If you get a chance ever, go to a drive-in. Give them the business. It's
yes.
such a fun experience. I mean, you just can't go wrong with a drive-in movie unless you don't have a car, and then I guess you could. But literally, it is such a fun way to watch a movie. I don't think I could recommend it enough, and they're a dying breed, unfortunately. Though, I will say this, I think a lot of people are realizing the effects, at least our age, they're realizing the effects of social media and streaming services, and they're realizing that we're losing a lot of these things. And I think that's helping, maybe not revitalize, but it's definitely helping keep the places that are up running still. And I'll give claps. I give claps to our generation for doing that because it really is important. I think that we're starting to lose our sense of community and entertainment, and eventually like we're starting to go towards this place where we do everything from a screen, or we stream it. And what happens if internet goes away for whatever reason or something like that? I have not like a ton, but I have a bunch of movies, like physical DVDs. And I like to keep those. I like to own it. It's nice. But don't rely on streaming services. I also, this is a little controversial, but I don't like binging things. I like spreading it out because I just feel like else I feel I don't feel as like moved as I would if I watched it like once a week or something like that. It's crazy that they like we've went from, you know, waiting years and years for movies to come out and TV shows and stuff like that to, hey, we're releasing this entire season on Netflix and you can watch it now. Like it's crazy. It's insane. And it's not all bad. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or anything. It's just, we're losing the fact that we were losing the drive-in movie theaters made me really sad because those are genuinely really cool things to be able to do. Is in the comfort of your own car, go to a movie and just watch the movie from your car. I just think that's cool. And the
Hmm.
fact that you're starting to not be able to do that, or some of the movie theaters, like, forget family movie theaters, almost none of those exist anymore. It's AMC or Cinemax. There might be another brand that I'm forgetting about, but AMC is like dominating the market, and the only reason that AMCs are going to exist is because they have high ticket prices, and I think they get a portion of movie sales or something. So they might stay in business, but are those the ones that you want to keep in business, or do you want to keep the mom and pops in business?
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's tough. But streaming services are also really nice because, I can watch all of The Office whenever I want if I have the streaming service that The Office is on. So I don't have to bring a DVD player around with me or whatever. So it just depends on how much you care about convenience and whatnot. Sorry, I didn't mean to get dark. I'm just saying, go out to your drive-ins, all right? That's all I'm saying.
True that.
But we are this is going to be a long one, fellas. we So I'll just go through the last part for me and like real quick. So just to kind of wrap things up, I want to talk about the future of film. uh Number one, predictions. I want to make these predictions, and we kind of talked about these before we started recording. Virtual reality can make films completely immersive. It'll be able to like place you inside the story with other people, and you can be like a participant rather than an observer, which is crazy to think about. Can
Hmm.
you just think about the first like cinematic masterpiece where you get to be the story of the character? Like, could you imagine? I just bought the Indiana Jones game. Spoiler alert, it doesn't run on my computer. So there is no spoiler. Um But it's crazy because you could literally go to a theater or from the comfort of your own home in the future, put on the VR headset, and you are now Indiana Jones. And with the integration of AI in storytelling and movies, once it gets to the point that it needs to, you will be able to generate your own story of you being Indiana Jones in VR, becoming Indiana Jones. So it's almost like a game. Except, like, if you die, the movie's probably over. But, like, can you just imagine VR mixed with artificial intelligence, mixed with storytelling, mixed with movies? Like, there's going to be a point where film is revolutionized and script writing and editing are going to create lifelike CGI characters and personalized content tailored to individuals' tastes. And tools like different generative AI are going to allow filmmakers to rapidly prototype and automate different aspects of production. So I ask this: do you think theaters will remain as relevant as a communal hub for these blockbusters? And how are technologies like AI and VR, are they going to redefine what we consider cinema? Are they going to be integrated? Do you think they are not going to be integrated? Like, I want to know other people's perspective on it because it's actually crazy the things that AI is already able to do in the past 5 to 10 years and what it's going to be able to do in the next 10 to 20 years is going to be crazy. And kind of like what I was saying, but this is my last question is, are we trading the shared magic of the big screen for convenience? And what do you think that's going to mean for future generations? And those are my
Hmm.
questions. I'm wrapped up.
Wrapped up. And see, I think AI is gonna make making movies a lot cheaper. So I think the indie film industry is going to boom.
I think so too.
And a
I
bunch
really
of
do.
indie films are gonna like take off. And I think that's gonna be really cool to see.
I think using AI as a tool rather than a replacement is very important. I
Yeah.
think that is where we need to draw the line in the sand with AI. And this episode isn't about AI, so I won't get into it too much. Maybe we'll do an episode on it. But whether you like it or not, AI is here. AI is going to probably stay, and you can be butthurt about it or not. Um, but AI is literally here, whether you want it to be or not, and using it as a tool instead of a replacement is very, very important. Because if you use it as a replacement, it's going to be very tough because one, it's not quite there yet. And two, you can kind of tell if something is AI generated if you look hard enough. It's starting to get harder, but you can still tell.
Mm-hmm.
But you also want to give artists and stuff a job still, right? Like I don't want artists to to lose their jobs because a robot is doing it for them. I don't want that. But it's also like, as a startup company, it's easier, let's say, for us to use AI to generate something than it is to get a writer or an artist or whatever it may be that we need for whatever reason. It's just, it's convenient to use that tool. Then you and I are able to talk to each other and kind of pick the things that the AI has chosen for us and then make it our own.
Yeah.
And I think it's all I'm saying is I think it's important to use it as a resource, not as a solution.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
But that's what I got.
Okay. So before we fully roll the credits here, let's hop into something fun. Popcorn. So I have a few little facts on popcorn here. So it was actually disrespectful to eat inside the movie theater. And it didn't fully come into play until the Great Depression. Theaters were struggling to make money, and popcorn was cheap to produce and sell. So vendors started setting up popcorn carts outside cinemas, and it quickly became a favorite snack.
Pause. Hold on. Popcorn was made because it's cheap
Mm-hmm.
in these movie theaters. AMC, if you're listening, and we know that you are, don't make your popcorn $12.
Very
Historically,
that.
it's supposed to be cheap. I understand that these movie theater mom and pop, you're fine. I forgive you. AMC, you can suck it. I'm not paying your $15 popcorn unless I get a cool bucket. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying unless I get a cool bucket. $15 for popcorn is ridiculous. It was made to be cheap. I didn't even know that, but now I'm mad. So AMC, I blame you. Mom and pop, you're okay. I forgive you because you need to make your money. But AMC, unless I have a vendetta against you that is unrealistic and you don't actually get any of the money and you're technically family owned, I'm very sorry as well. But right now I'm upset and your popcorn's too expensive and I want a bucket.
I swear. No, that's so valid. But yeah, so since the vendors started setting up popcorn carts outside, they were like, okay, yeah, cool. Um, the theaters were like, let me steal that idea. And so they began selling popcorn inside, and they made it a major source of revenue. By the 1940s, it was basically impossible to imagine movies without popcorn. And
There
then,
Sorry. I just want to say it is like, if you're not a popcorn person, Uh, that's crazy. Number one, if you're watching a movie and you don't like popcorn, unless you're upset that it gets stuck in your teeth, then I understand, and that's fine. It's really strange, but there's a psychological phenomenon, at least in my own brain, where if I'm watching a movie, I instinctively just think about popcorn. I think I've trained myself like a dog or something. But I
Hmm.
love like when I'm watching like YouTube at night, or I'm watching a movie, or I'm watching a TV show, it's popcorn time. It's popcorn time. I don't know why. I don't know why. Probably because I reinforced that habit inside of myself while watching movies as a kid, and I wanted popcorn. But popcorn is it's up there with the movie foods.
I agree. But do you want to know like an interesting fun fact of how it became even more popular?
I would love to.
During World War II, sugar rationing made candy scarce. So popcorn filled that gap,
No way.
and forever it stayed in the spotlight.
I'm telling you, whenever we have a big war, everything changes and people innovate. So that's crazy. Wait, they just had candy during World War II? Well, it sounds like they didn't have
No,
candy during
yeah,
World War
no, they
II.
didn't. They didn't because
So,
sugar
so
was
they switched to
scarce.
popcorn?
Yeah,
So they went from sweet to salty.
yeah,
Maybe
and
that
now
was
we
the
mix
issue.
it. Now we mix it.
That's facts. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Shout out to the World War II veterans. Wait, how long ago was that? That was like the 40s, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Holy. Shout out to World War II veterans and popcorn.
and popcorn.
Shout
I
out to popcorn
actually,
for saving our troops.
popcorn makes me sick.
Really?
Yep,
Oh man, I would lose it. I would still eat it.
I do.
Nah, bro. There's three things on this planet that I would eat forever, even if it made me incredibly sick. One, bread. I love bread. I try and not eat too much of it anymore, but I love bread. It's sorry. Milk, dairy products in general. I love dairy products. If I was lactose intolerant, I would still be consuming a disgusting amount of dairy products. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. I like ice cream. If I want ice cream once or twice a month, I'm gonna eat ice cream. If there was a healthier way to do it, I would probably think about it. But I love dairy. And then popcorn, specifically kettle corn. You can rip that from my cold, dead hands when I die. I love kettle corn. It is so good. Have you had kettle corn?
It's okay.
I will take it to the grave. I hope I'm buried in a coffin full of kettle corn in case I get hungry. I love kettle corn. It is my favorite popcorn ever.
Yo, fair enough. It's alright.
I maybe we need to do a episode on popcorn.
I mean, there's a lot of history there.
I would love to talk about World War II popcorn and
Yeah.
why kettle corn is delicious and why it's so expensive now versus back then in World War II. But I think that's the episode.
Yeah, so anyways, that was our journey through the movies. Let us know what your favorite movie moment ever is. You can either drop it in the comments or send us a DM on Instagram or BlueSky, which,
Favorite movie ever?
yeah, favorite movie ever.
Holy cow. I would love to know people's favorite movies ever.
Exactly.
Tell
So
me your
definitely,
favorite movie quote as well.
movie quote.
DM it
Okay,
to
yeah.
me.
Specifically, yeah. At the underscore 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 Keeg on Instagram for sure. But you can find us on almost all socials either under Midnight Oil Podcast or Midnight Oil Entertainment. Be sure to check out our Patreon. A super long uncut version is going on there of this episode. And you can find that under Midnight Oil Podcast. And then that leads us into our Patreon shout outs. Key, you want to take it away? We got
Let's
a new
do
one.
it. We're going all the way to present day, and it's time to shout out the Patreon members of What day is it? We're in December already. December
Yeah.
9th, Christmas is coming up. Thank you to our Patreon members. We have Agro/Zaid. We have, holy cow, eventually we're going to have Patreon members and we're just going to have a long list of them. And then this segment's going to be like 30 minutes long. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
We have Zaid/Agrod, most known on all socials as Agrod. We have Dakota, which is my partner. Thank you very much. And we have Cameron, which is Tab's partner. And all of them, we got so very, very lucky, and we are so very, very grateful. They have signed up for the top tier, and they get to hear all of our silly, uncut shenanigans that somehow make it into other people's ears, even though sometimes I just be yapping. So if you want to hear us yap, or you want the pre-shows, which are probably my favorite thing that we do over there, at least right now, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, go check out the Patreon. You can sign up for free and doesn't cost you anything. You can listen to our episodes over there. If you sign up, there are 3 different tiers. And I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
Good night.
Nighties!